So, James, here's a really interesting thing that came across my desk this week. Crypto cards. Those are
Yep.
Visa and MasterCards that, let you spend stable coins.
Right.
They've become one of the fastest growing segments of the digital payments market.
Hmm.
Artemis Analytics, which is a New York firm that collects data on digital assets and so forth, says that the crypto card spending surged from about $100 million a month in early 2023 to more than 1.5 billion a month in late 2025.
Wow. Hmm.
They said that this approaches the scale of P2P stablecoin transfers,
Hmm.
which have been around a lot
Right.
longer, obviously, right?
Right. Right.
And I think you and I would both agree the primary reason is is a primary reason is that using crypto through your cards means the transactions are running on the Visa and Mastercard rails, and the
Of course.
merchant doesn't need to do anything, really. You
Yep.
know,
Well,
there's
I think, Patty, I think it's such a huge point because, again, my big issue with crypto from day one has always been, what is the big benefit to the consumer,
right,
right? What is the big benefit to the merchant? You have to have an economic driver
right,
because you have to have an economic driver to overcome friction. If you're going to introduce friction and say, we're going to make it harder for you to buy something, it's like, why? So
why would I
there's
do it?
Right. So there's two ways to grow that, right? One way is to make an economic driver, which actually stablecoin does because it eliminates the need for the issuing bank and the interchange cost.
Right, right,
The second thing though is you can just reduce the friction. So if you can find a way to make it actually really easy to use crypto, where people
mm-hmm,
don't have to do some big crazy additional thing that they don't normally do, well, yeah, now all of a sudden crypto spending is going to go up, of course. And so
right.
I think this does both things. And so I got really interested with stablecoins when it came out as something that I think could have some legs to it.
No, I think you're right, James. In fact, Visa itself said that on an annualized basis, sort of the spend on Visa branded crypto cards um, reached $3.5 billion annualized run rate in 2025.
Wow. Yeah.
So, I mean, that's pretty significant. I mean, I remember back in the day when I first, when Visa and Mastercard were still owned by the banks,
Right.
right? I mean, $3.5 billion in a year was a lot of money to put on cards. I
Right.
mean, now a decent sized acquirer can do that, but
Right. Right.
back in the 80s and the 90s,
Yeah.
that was a big deal. And here's the other thing that I thought was also interesting from this report is that U.S. dollar USDT, the stable coin that's pegged to the U.S. dollar, dominates in almost all countries except for India
Hmm.
and Argentina.
Interesting.
Isn't that interesting? Yeah.
Yeah.
I could see kind of India. I just couldn't see South America. I mean, it was
Yeah.
sort of like,
Yeah.
I
That's
mean,
strange.
India sort of has its own,
Mhm.
thing, right? I mean,
Right. Yeah.
it has, it had a P2P network that
Well, who
was,
knows? Maybe 2026 will be the year that we kind of the breakout year for crypto, and we see a way for crypto to actually go mainstream and on Main Street, and maybe that will be stable coins running over the Visa Mastercard rails.
I think that that's a really good prediction. We should have done that. Next year, we're going to have to do a prediction thing.
Yeah, yeah, we didn't do our 2026 predictions yet. We may still pull them off. We'll see.
We can still pull it off. We
Yeah,
should try that. I think
yeah,
that'd be really worthwhile.
yeah.
So, okay, next up, ETA, Electronic Transactions Association, just released results of a study that was based chock full of data that
Hmm.
came out of the U.S. Bureau of Economic Analysis. And I wanted to just, share some highlights with our listeners. Digital payments exceeded 300 in 2024. Although this report was just released this week, excuse me, it's all based on 2024 data, so I think they
Right,
meant for it to come out late last
right.
year.
Of course, yeah.
You know, so digital payments exceeded $350 billion in U.S. economic output,
Hmm.
and it provided the payments industry provided 556,600 full and part time jobs in
Hmm.
2024.
Okay.
This was the one that I thought was really interesting. Direct labor income per job in the payment sector was 165K in 2024, which is more than double the U.S. average of 78K.
Wow.
That's pretty significant.
Yeah. So it's a good industry to be in.
It's a great industry to. It just shows it's a great industry to be in any economic, and whether
Right. Right.
whether the economy is going up or down.
Yeah, for sure.
And here was one other, which is not as compelling a figure, but it was interesting, is the payments industry directly contributed $148 billion to U.S. GDP. Now, of course, that's a fraction, like a 0.5% of total GDP, which was just over 29 trillion in 2024. But when you add items in such as operational and capital investment effects, the impact is boosted to 1.2% of national GDP for the year.
Yeah, and I think what's important there, Patty, too, is I think, and again, that's 2024 data. I think when you
Right.
look at 2025 and as we go into 2026, the real question here is how much is payments driving fintech? How much is payments driving embedded finance? How much is it driving SaaS and vertical SaaS?
Right.
So I
Right.
think if you look at those adjacent industries that are heavily impacted by the payments ecosystem, the payments business models, the payments
Right.
distribution channels, I think there's even an argument to be made that there's even a much larger impact.
Oh, I agree. I think you're only looking at direct payments in, input here, not at
Right,
the, ancillary things.
right.
And I think when you start looking at those, you know, I mean, I remember one time talking to a friend of mine who's an investment advisor, and I said, you can never go wrong betting on an established payments company
Yeah.
because people always are going to be making payments no matter where the economy is going.
Yep. Absolutely.
Yeah,
Mm.
Visa, like I was reading today that Visa and MasterCard stock took a little bit of a hit after the president, came
Yeah,
down
of
on
course.
the APR for credit cards.
Mhm.
But for starters, as you and I both know, Visa and MasterCard have nothing to do with that.
No, that has no impact whatsoever. Yeah.
And in fact, this one article I was reading was like this guy was acting like he was surprised. It's like they've rebounded already. Well, of course they've rebounded already
Well, and the
because
funny thing about it is, if you think about it, it actually should have shot up because you would say,
yeah,
if you're an issuing bank, that should get a hit. But it's if that actually happened, right? People would use cards a lot more,
right.
which would
Of
help
course
Visa
they
and
would.
MasterCard.
Right.
So
Of course
actually,
they
that
would.
move should have, if people understood what the move meant, it should have taken a leap, But I guess
Yeah.
maybe the other thing is, I guess the negative would be if you looked at it and said the Credit Card Competition Act and kind of the disruption of that. But again, even that really is focused more on interchange, not card brand fees. So
Right. Exactly. Exactly. So yeah, I just it's interesting. A lot of times, and most of the time, and I'm sure you run into it too. People that I know in my private life who have absolutely no understanding of how
right,
this business works.
right.
And I often tell them, this is the grease that keeps the wheels of commerce moving.
Right. Yeah. You talk about, it's like impact on GDP. It's like what percentage of GDP ran over a card? What,
Right?
35%? I don't know. It's a much bigger number. So,
Yeah, sure, exactly. Well, speaking of GDP, Visa just released its global economic outlook for 2026. It's forecasting 2.7% growth this year.
hmm,
Now, Visa's chief economist, Wayne Best, said, quote, what appears to be an average year is actually a period of profound economic transformation. Consumer spending remains solid, providing a stable foundation while business investment accelerates to drive the next phase of expansion. The
hmm.
economy is being fundamentally rebuilt by AI, he said, with new trade patterns and digital innovation. In fact, the research shows that small businesses are going to drive AI adoption this year. That AI integrating firms are showing significantly higher transaction growth.
Hmm.
And two other highlights from that report: consumer spend is expected to remain resilient, growing at 2.4%, which is about in
Yeah.
line with inflation, and a shift from consumer-led to investment-led growth is expected to support growth in commercial payments.
Wow.
I mean, that's something you and I have talked a lot about. It's
Yep.
the commercial payment movement to cards. And I think another thing that's interesting, and I'm actually just started researching this today, and we'll hopefully have something in a week or two for our listeners, is the Fed is reconsidering its role in the check system.
Really?
The last big revitalization or revision, shall we say, was the Check 21 Act, which led way to
Right.
things like mobile deposit, right?
Right. Right.
But that was 25 years ago.
Yep. Right.
And the technology that the Fed has is antiquated. So they're saying,
Sure.
they just put out a request for information asking people, you know, are you willing to pay for us to upgrade the equipment, or
Right.
are you more, can you move to digital, which would be more efficient and actually
Right.
cost you less money in the long run?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So
Interesting.
I thought that was interesting.
Yeah.
So I'll have some more on that after. It's one of those documents that's about this thick,
Yeah. Yeah.
with tons of footnotes. So I'm trying to really pour over it. Okay, finally, Americans appear to be of two minds when it comes to money, specifically the form factors that support their spending.
Right.
2 in 5 Americans in a recent survey, adults, American adults, said that cash feels more, quote, real than does digital money. Yet in practice, 1 in 5 say they use cash only a few times a year, and
Right.
18% say they use it daily.
Mm.
Now, the average person, this is the survey was done by a company called Empower, which is a financial planning and investment firm, headquartered in Colorado, I believe. So they found that the average person holds between $51 and $100 in their physical wallets, except Gen X. That's the only generation that carries more, which I think this is really interesting because you and I talk about this all the time, because you're kind of closer to Gen X, far closer than
Right.
I am.
Right.
And I'm probably in that closer to that $100 range.
Right.
But Gen X is the only generation that carries more, averaging between $101 and $200 at a time.
Really?
Nearly half of people said that they use physical money for tips,
Yeah.
and a third say they use it in cash discounting situations when to get the discount for paying with cash.
Really? That
Yeah.
wait, that's interesting. So hold on. So this study actually did find that consumers are starting to potentially change behavior a bit because of cash discounting.
Yeah.
I mean, that's actually a big deal because that's actually the first study of any kind that I've heard of that validated that at all. And,
Oh, yeah.
it again, it is interesting because it does tend to begin to validate some of Visa's concern. This wouldn't necessarily be a big concern for ISOs, but
No.
meaning ISOs make so much more money on dual pricing that or cash discounting that if it changed consumer behavior a little bit, it's still worth it. But
Right.
for
Exactly.
Visa and MasterCard, all they care about is volume. So
Right.
if reports start to come out like that, where it's like, hey, customers are a little bit more likely to, use cash in a cash discount situation. Well, if it moves the needle 2% for Visa, that's a big deal because they're only projecting
Sure.
2.4% growth in volume year over year. Well, if this is a 2% swing, that's a big problem. So that is interesting.
Well, it's more something they should be concerned about than the Credit Card Competition Act.
Right. Right.
Or
Yeah.
or
Right.
the,
It
or the
is.
cap on APRs.
It is except here's the other thing I would say is what would be even more interesting to me is a study that could validate the behavior change because
Right.
That to me is could potentially be similar to these things that have come out and said, we asked 100 people if they would like it if they got charged more when they used their card and they all said no. It's like,
Yeah, really?
well, duh, who cares? Like the question is, did they change and not use their card because of this issue, or did they decide not to go back to that business, or what was the definable change in behavior that resulted from this? And I have yet to see any data that would suggest that there's anything to that at all. So this, but again, it is interesting.
It is interesting,
so.
and again, it was a thousand people. I mean, it's
Right.
a fairly decent size.
Depending on how they put that sample set together, as long as it was statistically accurate, it's probably gonna, that's reasonable. So
they seem to at least span the generationally.
Right. Exactly.
Not sure about income wise.
Right.
But I wanted to also just bring up a couple of the other scenarios where Americans like using cash.
Mm-hmm.
When paying a small business that does not accept cards, which tells people there are still
pretty few and
businesses
far
out
between.
there.
Yep.
that need to be sold on credit cards. This is the one I'm always on, is splitting a restaurant tab with friends.
Mm-hmm.
Because, I have some friends that everybody throws their card down, and I'm usually, can I just give you the cash and you put my share on the card?
Right.
And here's something that was really interesting: paying for parking meters or tolls. So I have a little anecdote here. I, like most people, have a smart pass for my car.
Yeah.
Right. And I had to travel up to New York recently, and my cousin was driving, and she didn't have a smart pass. So she said, "Would you bring your smart pass?" Yeah, sure. Of course, I get in the car and I can't remember where I packed it.
Sure. Yeah, that's fun.
And it was such a pain in the butt to have to go to the cash only. There's only
right, and pay for
the
your
Jersey
toll.
Turnpike and the Garden State.
Right.
At
Right.
95, you had to keep. I'd be like, so I finally did find it, but it was one of those things where it was like we had to roll up to the
Mm-hmm.
and the guy was like sitting there reading a book.
All right. He's like, "What are you doing here?" Yeah.
We rolled down the window. We need to pay you cash.
All right.
He was almost the one guy was almost like in a state of shock that somebody came to his window.
Right. Exactly. That's funny.
But anyway.
Yeah.
Well, that's it for this week.
Awesome. Patty, thank you so much. As always, appreciate you keeping us up to date.
Sure thing, James.